There's a zoologist, for example, in the film, who is interested in the sort of natural effects of creating like such an unnatural piece of weaponry that they all are, they have a lot of fear over, obviously. But also there's scientists who obviously also create the weapons. And we see the experience of a guy who creates his own version of a weapon, who is horrified at his own creation and spends a lot of the time, basically seems suicidal. Like he basically just wants it out of his brain. He wished he had never thought of it. Yeah,
because even at, like it gets to it, but there's a segment where, he's deciding on if he wants to use this weapon for good. And
then he's like, is there a good way to use this weapon?
Right. And then at the end, he's like, I need to make sure nobody uses this again. So he's constantly having this back and forth with himself that's just like, if I'm the only one that knows it, I might have to rid myself of this world to rid the idea itself. And that's interesting and very dark.
Yeah, well, and
I wasn't expecting that from Godzilla.
No, well, and it's genuinely like, it almost gets into like a sort of like mad scientist melodrama, and you really feel it. Like, it's very like again, I think the actors are really good in this, and the way that they slowly sort of like sink you into this world, like the way that they start introducing you to just like these small towns that have kind of like isolated radioactive fallout, but also are having houses crushed sometimes, and you're like, who's doing that? It could be the 165 feet tall lizard, yeah. But they also address like the political turmoil of the idea of the existence of this monster that just comes out of the water and starts, attacking local villages. They have a big conversation about whether they should tell the public the truth or withhold it for economic reasons, or whether it'll cause a panic. Which
is hilarious because it's like by the time Godzilla shows up, I don't think there's any hiding.
No, exactly. But I really like the zoologist and the paleontologist that they when he first sees Godzilla, his first idea is actually because these are all characters who have lived through Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the atomic bomb. I felt a lot of that kind of just that kind of psychic fallout, that psychic pain that we felt in like Akira. I felt a lot of that here, actually. I feel like
where you haven't seen it, but you feel like there's something that's looming, and that has been there before.
If you feel like everyone's already been like partially broken by this thing, basically, like when the movie starts, and to see characters, for example, who his first reaction to Godzilla is not like killable. He's just like, clearly the hydrogen bomb had no effect on him. So he was kind of like, we should be trying to study him and trying to find out how we can prevent further damages from the hydrogen bombs.
Just from a human perspective, is when they have that conversation and they're like, they realize that their most destructive weapon is the thing that woke
decimated their society.
It woke the monster. It didn't do anything but wake it up.
But yeah, he wants to secure Godzilla, because perhaps there's like a chance of curing nuclear radiation through Godzilla. But then we also get into sort of like subplots about how Godzilla is kind of like interrupting domestic and economic life in Japan.
A great deal.
Yeah, like we kind of get into like there's actually like a lot of domestic home scenes about like people who work in the fishing industry who are having their their industry ruined by Godzilla eating all the fish.
It reminded me of like watching a scene in which you're about to watch something like Tokyo Story, like where a family just sitting there having a great time with their family,
but then the house would start to shake.
Yeah, but the moment that the niceties start to happen, the bell rings and Godzilla's in town. So they never have that moment of relief or just sitting with a family and enjoying that time.
No, I absolutely agree.
It sets it up, and then they're like, Godzilla.
Yeah, and what's funny is that this is the stuff that a lot of people didn't like about the new Godzilla that came out in 2014 or whatever.
Because they focused so much
because they focused on the human characters.
Which is like essential. It's like, you gotta have something besides just an hour-long giant lizard fight.
Well, and to me, it's like seeing, especially on that scale, the effect Godzilla has on the world is so more impactful than even even when we get into sequels where the monsters actually like throw down like ballroom bathroom brawling up and whatnot,
throwing rocks and throwing punches.
Like that stuff has its own great quality to it, and I think that's what some people were hoping for out of new. So maybe this new one will provide it for them.
Yeah, maybe that's interesting thought that maybe this new one will actually go down the campy route a little more instead of trying to capture the emotion that the first one did.
It still has to bounce off the tone set by the first one, which for me is the first Godzilla movie to actually capture a bit of the tone of the original film in a long time of these films.
Yeah,
so, I mean, more so than obviously the American Godzilla from 1998.
Well, yeah, Matthew Broderick, baby.
Yeah, well, and then the 80s and 90s Japanese Godzilla movies that they did.
They're just full camp, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are like there's whole melodramas to do with like Mothra's children and like Mothra's bros and like which I'm sure have their own value. I can't wait to get to some of those at some point. But it's a very different kind of quality than this, which I just feel is like really, really powerful and moving and soulful in a way that you just wouldn't expect of a movie with a giant guy in a lizard suit like stomping around miniatures, right? Like you don't expect that.
At how much I actually